Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have an incredibly inspiring episode lined up for you. Joining us is a veteran whose life story is a testament to resilience and transformation. His journey spans 27 years across both the enlisted and officer ranks in the Navy, touching on both active duty and reserves. From growing up on a small family farm in Idaho to facing the life-altering challenge of stage 4 cancer linked to burn pit exposure, his experiences are both profound and impactful. Throughout his military career, he distinguished himself through service in a significant role during the OIF-OEF transition. He was instrumental in developing a streamlined customs process that enabled 50,000 troops to reunite with their families quickly upon returning to the United States, highlighting the dedication to the well-being of his fellow servicemen and women. Today, he leads Warriors to Wealth, a pioneering initiative that empowers military personnel, first responders, and veterans to identify and pursue their lifestyle missions. His vision extends to creating a campus where individuals can come to focus on crafting and achieving their personal and professional goals. Our guest embodies the core values of integrity, grit, and a deep commitment to helping others. He's driven by his own experiences and the challenges he's overcome, including his battle with cancer. His life's work is about building resilience and providing support where needed. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Rod Blunk, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran, exemplifying the spirit of service, leadership, and transformation. Rod, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Adam. I don't even know if I need to say anything else. Holy cow.
So, dude, thanks so much for being here and agreeing to do this show. Let's just jump right in and talk about a little bit about your life growing up on that small family farm in Idaho. Fun fact, I was raised in the farm towns of Poseyville, Indiana, so I got a little bit of similarity going on there. And then kind of talk a little bit about what it was that inspired you or kind of influenced you to join the Navy.
All right. Well, so it was kind of funny. We had first farm we had, maybe 10 acres, I'm estimating. We had cattle, we had some sheep. The sheep was for 4-H. That was just one of those things you did, and the cattle, well, we raised the cattle and ate the cattle. We had rabbits, we had chickens, right? And you would just go and that's what you did, right? You had a small farm. We had a small hay field. We would move pipe in the morning, right? And still get up in the morning and move pipe. And in the winters, you would still get up in the morning and have to take buckets of hot water to the watering trough for the cattle because it would freeze overnight, right? So here I am, a third grader carrying a bucket of hot water at 6 a.m. in the morning, and it's freezing cold out and things sloshing everywhere, and I'm dumping it into the trough. And that was your morning, right? And then you go to school and you came home and you did it again, and then you threw out the hay or whatever you needed to do. And but it was the way you lived, right? And that's what we did, and that's what we knew. And then as life changes, we moved to a different spot, and then my parents ended up in a divorce, which at that time you're like, okay, what's going on? But funniest thing is, my dad was a banker, and so he stayed in the banking field. But we had the farm with him, and then my mom goes and gets married again, and we ended up with a pig farm. And oh my gosh, that's even a lot more fun. That one ended up being 16 acres, and I went in and ended up being in Future Farmers America. And then with that, ended up showing hogs because we had hogs. And I'll tell you, it makes you realize how hard things are. But then again, it makes you realize that if you just say, you know what, it's a fact of life, I'm going to move forward and go from there. Well, that's what we did. And God bless my mom's soul, and God bless her husband. My mom passed away. But anyway, long story short, she just had that work ethic. Like, she worked during the day. It was a hobby farm, right? You worked during the day and you worked at night. And that's what we knew, and that's what we enjoyed. Well, we say we enjoyed it, but that's what we did. And everybody got along. And amazingly for me, my parents' divorce didn't hurt the family. They actually became really good friends. And it was one of those things when you go and talk to people like, oh man, you grew up with a divorce. And it was the best thing ever. They were best friends, and we went and shared Thanksgivings together and birthdays together. It was like an extended family. So I loved it.
That's interesting, because I actually just took a note. I wanted to ask you, how old were you when your parents got divorced?
I was in the fifth, sixth grade.
So what is that, like
Yeah,
9 or so,
9,
10
10, right?
maybe?
Because you turned 14 about ninth grade, right? So
Okay, and my follow-up question to that was going to be, but you've already answered it, is how do you think that affected you and your like for me, my parents divorced when I was 7, and it was not amicable. It was awful, and it really shaped me as a human. And I wouldn't realize this till later, late in my 30s, in fact, that had a big impact on who I was, my mindset, my inner narrative. So it sounds like when your parents split, things maybe actually got a little bit better.
and I didn't realize things were bad, right? Because when you're playing with GI Joes and doing whatever we did, as kids, we were always outside, right? You did whatever you did outside, right? You don't realize some of the stuff because you're too busy in your little kid world, right? And then it happened, and you're like, oh, I don't understand, right? I don't quite understand. Mom's living down in one part of Idaho, and Dad and us are living in another part of Idaho. And then they kind of say, well, we're not living together anymore. And the next thing, you got some dating going on, and you're like, all right, well, we're going to kind of go with it, right? But the relationship wasn't bad. Maybe they hit it, maybe they did a great job and didn't bring it in front of us. We never really saw them fighting, and we really don't know the cause. I never really asked. I didn't think it was, if it was a really big deal.
But that's definitely speaks to, and answers your question really well. So thank you very much for that. But my parents, complete opposite situation. There are stories that came from my grandmother of my dad coming to my mom's house to pick us up on the weekends, and the neighbors across the street having to stop him from turning into the driveway because she's got the cops there waiting to arrest him. Right. So very different kind of upbringing for me. Right. Like, so you can see how something like that definitely would affect
Yeah.
me growing up versus, like you said, alluded to the fact that maybe your parents did the right thing and did the right thing by you guys as kids and kind of hid that from you. So thanks for answering that question. Just kind of moving on, not unless you had more to say about that, but I'm really interested in, yeah. What influenced you to join the Navy? Were you really young growing up playing GI Joes and like, man, I really think I kind of want to go do some of this stuff as time grew on, or was there like a moment that you reached, growing up through school that you were like, I want to go be in the Navy? Was it as simple as like, I don't want to be in the farms of Idaho forever, so let me get the hell out of here? Because that's my story. That's very much my story. I wasn't very good at school. I kept my grades up to play sports, and I knew I wanted the hell out of Poseyville, Indiana, because the world's a big, big place. How am I going to do that? The Army, right? So what was that for you?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I was a tinkerer, right? I worked on cars. I had an old Volkswagen Bug, and then I don't know if you know about anything about bugs, but the acoustics in a Volkswagen Bug are amazing, right? So you could just put these stereo systems back in the '80s, right? You could put these stereo systems in and just make it rock. I mean, they were great back before we had all the cool stuff that they have nowadays. But anyway, that was one of the things. So I was a tinker, and then I'm like, I didn't know, I wasn't really into, I wanted to go, I thought about going to college, but I didn't understand, like, we didn't really, my family didn't have anybody go to college, right? And so I'm like, well, I don't really want to do anything around here. My brother, who was older, ended up working at the local lumber yard and did some, college, but local TVC community college. And I'm like, there's something else out there. I gotta get out of here. I gotta separate me from this area. And I was like, how am I gonna do that? And I was interested in mechanics. Right? I was tinkerer, and I went over to the Navy and all that. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a ground pounder, but working on submarines and doing stuff like that, that sounds kind of cool, kind of odd, something you could write back home about. So I signed up for that. But what's funny is I also signed up for going to the Naval Academy. And just a long story short, I ended up getting accepted to the Naval Academy. But I didn't realize that being that accepted to the Naval Academy actually would have trumped my enlisted commitment. But not that recruiter, man. He had me down. He had me down because I was like,
oh, he was going to make sure that you were a number that was going to count. I can imagine, right? Like that was all he cared about. He's like,
no,
fuck
you're going, buddy.
The Naval Academy is not. Yeah, no, that's great, man. So why submarines? That's terrifying to me. I don't want to be in a tin can submerged under water that we haven't even explored, like ever, right? Like we don't even know what's really down there, and there's no way out. Like you ain't getting out of that, right? Like,
right. Well, you're gonna have to here's another kind of funny thing. So, last thing I want to do is get eaten by a shark. So guess what? If the sub goes down, I'm really not gonna make it to the surface. So it's not like I'm going to worry about eating by a shark. I'm going to worry about drowning on my way up there. Then the shark can go ahead and eat me. I'm not going to feel it. And that's really kind of what it was. And they're fast. To me, it was kind of fascinating. Hey, you got this vessel. It intentionally sinks itself, and then it comes back up. All right.
For sure. They are fascinating. Yeah. It is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. I have no desire to understand it. I'm just going to leave them be fascinating to me, but you're absolutely right. So when did you realize, because you were both, right? You were enlisted and an officer, right? And so obviously there's a reason for that. And I'm curious, is it because you realized you had gotten accepted to the academy and you wanted to go back and kind of try that route? Or was it just something that kind of naturally progressed across your career? Like, I know a lot of enlisted guys, at least in the Army, I've only met two, I think, in my tenured career in the Army that made it to E7 and then transition, started all over again and made it to major.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's incredible, right? Because you're talking 12, 13 years back then, right? Nobody was making 7 and 7 before the surge in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so 12, 13 years that's really fast. And so they make that, and then they're like, I think I want to start all over as a butter bar. And like, that's tough. So can you walk us through that transition for us?
With nuclear power, you end up going in as an E3, right? So not too bad. And then you go to your A school. I think it's very similar to you guys' the Army's first school, right? Whatever basic it is. So we do that.
Yeah, depending on your MOS.
Depending on your MOS, right? So we do that, and when we get out of that school, we actually pick up E4. Yeah, so it's kind of a good deal, right? And you come out, you're E4, you're a petty officer, but you're a petty officer in a nuclear power field. So you're still just a no-name brand because you're still at the bottom of the boat, right?
And as we both know, there's a lot.
There's a lot to learn.
A lot.
Sounds so good when a recruiter tells you, "Man, you'll be an E4." Yeah, man, what's that mean? That means you're like everybody else.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
just a common
man.
You're
just another common man. So I got through that, and then you do this major school where you go through learn about the nuclear power plant, and then you go to the prototypes and you do that. So I was set to end up staying as what they call a staff pickup, a SPOO guys, right? And I'm like, all right. And at the same time, there was this. I'm starting to like this. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I kind of like this nuclear power stuff. And they came around and said, hey, anybody want to try out for this? It was called Broadening Opportunity for Officer Selection and Training, Boost, back in the day. It's something now, I think, Seaman Admiral, or it's changed its name again.
Yeah, there's a couple of programs out there. I just had a buddy, he was in the Army forever and went and became an officer in
Yeah.
the Air Force. So it's interesting programs. They weren't ever offered to me because I spent my entire career in Iraq and
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
you
Like
got a
literally,
little, yeah.
it was, there was nobody was going anywhere. I mean, they stopped moved me to send me on a third deployment to Iraq from Fort Stewart.
Yes.
So, I didn't get the travel experience or the opportunity experience. It was just, you're going to combat a lot,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
that's where I think that I'm really glad, the Lord had the path that He chose me to go. And then there was times I think, oh man, I should be doing that. But at the same time, like I'm doing what I need to be doing, whatever reason it was. And I felt, I had a really good buddy, high school buddy, who did all Army, all the way up, Special Forces, and ended up, I was going to say not Command Master Chief, but Sergeant Major, a Command Sergeant Major, right? He was doing all kinds of stuff, like jumping out of planes and crazy shit like that. I went to Panama, and I was like, I was jealous, and then I wasn't, right? But it's a different path, right? I like
right,
tinkering.
for sure.
That was where I like to do. I like to
Right.
tinker. So
Lean into what you're good at.
yeah,
right?
I was good at.
Yeah.
He was much more physically fit than I was, so his ability to kick ass significantly higher than mine, right? So hey, you go kick ass.
The easy choice.
I'm gonna
for you,
go
right?
turn this wrench, right?
Right. No, for sure. So you get this opportunity to participate in this program, and you're like, yeah, fuck it, let's do this.
Like,
and what rank were you at this point?
I'm like, okay, I got 4 more years. I'm gonna have 6 with the other one. I'll get college out of this. You kidding me? They're gonna pay for college? Shoot, I'm going that way, right? They'll pay for college. Nobody in my family went to college, right? Or my immediate area had gone to college and graduated with a degree.
Same right. In my family. We grew up, sounds like very similar, right? Which makes sense. Idaho, not quite Midwest. It's definitely way west, but like similar to the Midwest.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I'm like, I'm going to do it. So the funniest thing is, what am I doing? Well, we didn't have the money to really do like all, because, the ROTC, because I ended up going to ROTC, even though I did apply to the academy again and I got accepted. I said, I just didn't want to go and get yelled at again. I've already been in the military for 4 years at that point. I didn't feel like getting yelled at. So I'm like, I'm going to go ROTC, have a little more college life, enjoy that. And, it just ended up being, it was good. And the funny thing about it, where I was going with this is, I choose to go to Tulane. I didn't even know where Tulane was. All I knew was that the officer that was in charge, Captain Hudson, had worked a deal with Tulane that if he got all these students in there under an ROTC scholarship, the school would give them free room and board. Totally game in. I had no costs whatsoever. And I'm like, sign me up. And they had a good engineering program. I'm like, next thing you know, I'm in New Orleans. Now I'm a kid, farm kid, went to boot camp, eyes wide open on that one. Like, holy cow, look at all these crazy people. And now I'm out here in New Orleans. Holy cow, that's a lot more crazy people. And holy cow, this is Sin City.
Yeah.
But it was good. I mean, It was fun. Met a lot of great friends. Still have a lot of great friends from there. And then, it's funny. I didn't want to go back into nuclear power. I was like, remember how he kept telling you, maybe that's what I want to go do. So I was in shape, and I was like, man, maybe I'll go be a CB, and I'll go, be that bunker guy driving the bulldozer. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I applied to that. I didn't get it. Another guy in our class got it, which is fine. And then I'm still like, okay, I'm not going back to nuclear power. I ended up going to do supply, and nothing is supply, but I wasn't the type of guy to sit back and say, here's your pencil, here's your wrench, go turn it, right? I was the guy like, I wanted to go do something, right? I had to go do something. I had to go lead. I had to be something and change something. And that's probably from my background, right? So I said, I go and say, hey, can I go and try out for nuclear power and see if I can get an interview? Well, I got an interview. I go in there. I'm wearing my butter bar. I'm wearing supply pork chops. And the Admiral DeMars goes, what the hell are you doing in here? You're a supply corps officer. And I'm like, yeah, about that. I kind of screwed up. This is not me. It's not what I want to do. I realize my true heart and passion is to lead and make things happen. I can't do that here, but I can do it for nuclear power. And I'll tell you, I'll give you 110%. I'm committed. I needed the slap in the face to realize that. And he's like, yeah, you just get the fuck out of my office. Pardon my French. But, and
No,
I'm
you're
like,
good,
all
man.
right.
No, open show. Talk how you talk. Be yourself.
Exactly.
Here,
And so I walk out and I'm like, well, I guess I'm back off to supply corps school and see how that goes. And the commander goes, huh, I guess you'll get your orders next week. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, you made it. Admiral Victor, you were honest. You were just who you are. And so you're going to go. And lo and behold, off to nuclear power school for round 2.
So now you're at nuclear power school again, back into the nuclear
Pipeline
field,
Yeah.
right? And that's where you'd spend the rest of your career.
Yeah, that's where I ended up. So I did that all the way up. Did my first, deployments out of Pearl Harbor, up into some cold areas, and then I was on the fast attack, so we got to do a lot of stuff. I think I had 3 West packs, and then what was funny is I had 3 West packs, and I'd come in and I'd go right to a dry dock. So West pack dry dock. That kind of sucked. And then I came back, worked at the Office of Naval Intelligence, and evaluated the stuff we did. So it was kind of going on from there. And then I'm like, I can't submit my wife, because at the time I ended up getting engaged. Could not submit my wife to that type of a tour and then come home and be home but not be home. And so I went to the reserves and ended up working for the warfighters. I first went for the surface guys. They needed a sub guy, did that. But then I got into where we were like submarine assist teams, where we would go and ride the carriers and support on the underwater sea domination area that was necessary for any carrier strike group.
Okay. So collectively, how much active duty time did you have enlisted?
4 years.
Okay, so you did 4 years active duty enlisted, then you transitioned to become an officer. And how long were you active as an officer?
Another 6 years as an officer, and then I had that 1 year, so 7 altogether.
Activation. Right? Okay, so 7 total years. So the rest of your 20 years was spent in the reserves. And for anybody who is probably listening to this that doesn't know the reserves, how does it work in the Navy? I don't know how it works in the Navy. And my sister just got out of the Air Force and they have some weird deal worked out. All I could speak on is for the Army, and it's like 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. So speak a little bit just to paint the perspective of what else you were doing.
So it was 1 week, 1 week in a month, but it's never 1 weekend in a month, right? We had all this training we had to get done so that we can fulfill the mission that was necessary. We would be augment T teams to support like a lot of things, right? But we had to get qualified in the theaters to be able to operate and coordinate various missions that submarines would be done. So we'd have to know what we're doing to talk to both the Airedales as well as the surface fleet and any other tools in the toolbox, right? So we had to do this whole qualification. So you're doing more than just 2 weeks. And then our mission set that we would do, it wasn't 2 weeks. It would end up being it could up to be a month and a half, because the augmentation just depended on what we were doing. We were there to help carrier strike groups get ready to go for deployment. And if they weren't ready, well, we just continued to help them get ready. Or we would augment, things that would go on. When we went and did all the Tomahawk strikes from submarines back in 2000 timeframe, I can't remember exactly. I ended up, getting active duty for a short period of time at the Pentagon to count Tomahawk missiles and what did they do and where we were hitting, and replying those things in straight briefs out to the CNO. So it all fluctuated, all of that. And that was kind of the progression for a submarine officer. And we had same guys that were also submarine intel or otherwise that supported that same group, and we would just blend in because we didn't want to be seen as the reservists coming in. We wanted to see as, hey, I'm gonna help you out. Where you go worry about this, I'm qualified here, and it was try to be a seamless integration.
For sure. So, what led to the decision for you to walk away from active duty and go to the reserves? And what I really want to do, I want to touch on if it was, it's not for every veteran, but for more often than not, it for every veteran, the transition from active duty, whether that be to the guard or the reserves or just regular civilian life, it's brutal. It sucks your soul away, and as far as I know, no branch has figured out the real way to you know for example, the Army taught me how to turn all of those emotions off and focus on the mission, nothing but the mission, and moreover, killing
Right,
people. Right? I was an infantry guy. That's what we're going to do, and that's what I did my whole
right,
career. Right? So then when you get out and you don't have that purpose anymore, they've turned you into this war machine, right? Who's really, 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 really good at one fucking
right.
thing. And so the transition becomes this deep, dark fucking hole you fall in because you have no idea who you are or what you're doing. So talk to us about your decision to leave active duty, and then we'll start diving into your transition, and then we'll
Well,
take it from there.
so Adam, you put me into a big rabbit hole, as you and I've talked a little bit before on this.
Yeah, well, that's the point of this show because
I'm a,
I tell you, Rod, the whole point of this is, you know, I think veterans can pull themselves out of that hole by
oh yeah,
listening to other veterans be vulnerable and tell their stories. And I think that because I felt just as alone, I knew logically that I wasn't alone, that there's plenty of us veterans out there that are suffering, but I didn't think they were suffering like I was suffering. Like nobody can understand what I'm going through but me, right? Kind of thing. And I just think by painting this picture and showing other veterans that, yeah, it sucks, it's brutal, and there's a lot to figure out, and it's a lot of hard work, but you can get to the
yeah.
other side of it. And so I welcome the rabbit holes
Oh
on this show, and that's why there's no time limit on this show, and there's no rules here.
yeah.
And it's important because conversation is the first way that you can start to heal,
Yeah.
you
All
know.
right. All right. Well, so your point is so much where I'm going with why I did Warriors to Wealth too. So, you know, and this might rub people wrong, but frankly, who cares? I'm too old to give a shit. Um, we go in and we all get focused on that mission, and like my mission was, kind of oversight and at the big scale it's like project management and making I started moving, we started being tactical and but I wasn't tactical like I'm shooting at somebody right now. That kind of happened a little in Iraq where I got shot at, but that's a different story. But you're being more tactical, and so my mindset was, how do I execute to a plan? I didn't really have to worry about being an ass kicker like you, but I had to worry about completing that job, right? And so when I started trying to figure out, all right, what am I going to do, right? I didn't know where I was going to go. I knew that I couldn't go back and have a relationship with my family because I knew I was going to be gone. And at that time, I was like you. I'm mission driven. My family comes second. And how it's going to be is how it is. We're going to go where it is, and I'm gonna hope you come along for the ride. But you weren't in their mind, and that was kind of my thing. I'm like, I can't do that. I've watched too many guys go through divorces or otherwise that were on active duty because of that mission tempo, right? And it ruins them. And this kind of was one of these things in my back of my mind that really, last year or so, it's pushed me into this Warriors of Wealth. But
It's funny that you talk about that because I didn't recognize it and see it the way that you saw it, right? Like in the infantry, what I was doing, the drinking and the partying and the being divorced and being gone all the time, that's just I thought that's just how it was.
right,
Like that's just we choose. you just do this, right? And like, this is normal life for guys in this field. And the outliers in that are the guys who manage to have a 20-year career and stay married to the same
Right.
woman. And I always looked up to those people because, I've got 2 blown up marriages. I'm on my 3rd, right? And so for you to recognize that and realize, that's not a life you wanted, and that was a life you were going to have if you stayed in, that's pretty self-aware, I would say, because I just thought like, hey, this is part of the job. This is what I'm doing. This is what I signed up for. This is cool. This is how it's going to be,
Right.
right? Hindsight's 2020, and I shouldn't have looked at it that way.
Well, that's very interesting. And this is why I love talking with you, is within that training we do, and maybe we'll get back to how we get these things. Within that training we do, right? Where do we encompass the spouse? Where do we encompass, my mission's X, but honey, eventually my mission won't be X. My mission's going to be something, but I need you to help figure out the other portion of that mission. So we're going to have these gaps, right? And that's one thing I started figuring out. And maybe at the time I didn't figure it out that there was gaps when I was thinking about it, and I just didn't realize it, right? I guess I was like, I saw these guys ruin their stuff. I went through a divorce, when my parents divorced. I'm like, I don't want that. I didn't want that, right? I didn't get married till I was 30, right? So I did some stupid shit, right? Don't get me wrong. I did some stupid shit. We all do stupid shit. But my wife ended up being like my best friend before I married her, because I met her, and then I met her right before I went out to my first duty station, 3 years, right? We're just talking for 3 years. I'm not dating. I wasn't really dating her. I'd bring her out when I could, but I wasn't dating her. But that allowed me to figure shit out. And that time was important. Like I watched many of these guys, and when you end up in the officer side, you start seeing the guys, oh, my sweetheart, all we do is we have sex, and that's what's great. Well, you fall apart on those things, right? The core of these relationships isn't sex. The core is, how do you build a partnership with that spouse and go on, right? And so when I see, even like yourself telling me, like, you're drinking all stuff, that I'm not criticizing him. I'm like, you know what? If we identify that there's a mission set between the two of you, and that mission set is to make sure that when you're done getting your ass kicked on the freaking field, or at the submarine, or at the golf course with the Air Force, it is where it is. But you got to transition on. And if you buy in as a family unit that your wife could be focusing on that future while you focus on the now, and then when you need that transition, whenever it is, if it's 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, 12 years, or something else has happened, you can transition, because you're a family mission set to make the family mission work. And I get very passionate about this, because we, as the armed forces, do shit to make that happen. We say all this stuff, and it's total bullshit. Nobody goes in and says, hey, you're a freaking awesome sniper, or you're a freaking awesome ground pounder, or you're a freaking awesome wrench turner. But where's your wife? Or where's your spouse? Where's your partner? How do they fit in this equation? Well, they don't. Well, that's because what we tell you, you're that guy, and we don't care, and they come along, and we'll give them jobs. No, that's not what it does.
Yeah, the old if the Army wanted you to have a wife, they'd have issued you one adage, and you're right. Where in all of this training did they ever make room for a spouse? And I have a theory that because of what the military's demographic is, and if you really look at it, it's 17 to 20 years old, right? Like, you're not coming in with one of those, right? Like, and in theory, you're probably not even worried about it. And then you send them, like for me, for example, you send them to an infantry unit that's deploying. Literally, when I would land from one deployment, I had my orders for the next deployment. You know what I'm saying? So that's the kind of op tempo we were running. And so there's not time to do what you said and form that relationship with someone and really set down some values and understand where the hard lines that aren't going to be crossed. So of course, all you're going to do is have sex and be
Right.
gone. Really, like that's the fundamental basis of your relationship. And I'm so glad that you shared that with us, because it is important. It's not yet something that we've touched on here. So when you do decide that you're going to get out, start with, what are you feeling and how are you feeling about transitioning out? Are you feeling pretty good because you did have that great relationship with I assume you're saying, or I'm hearing you saying right now, that you had built a good relationship with your wife, and then you were like, I'm living in the now, but I know she's got me covered for the
Yeah.
future. So are you feeling pretty
Yeah.
good? You're feeling pretty good about your
I,
transition, making the decision to get out. I assume there's a lot of discussion between you and your wife about staying in, getting out, and you guys come to some kind of mutual agreement. You're both on the same page, and you're thinking everything's going to be great, right?
and she had a career. She was doing really well, family-owned business, doing great, and she has her shit together, right? She still has her shit together, regardless of what it is. Amazing shit together. So much that I call her my guardian angel for many, many more stories we could tell. But it was hard for me because, again, back to the mission. Give me the mission we're going to do. So I had to find something to do that. And everywhere I went, I didn't feel like it matched, but I knew the alternative, right? And my wife's like, "Hey, we can stay in, we can go, I can move," and I'm like, "I don't think that's where I need to be," and because I wanted it to work, and I didn't want. I had seen too much of the divorces or the, hey, I went out and my wife is now sleeping with my buddy or whatever, right? I didn't want that. I knew she wasn't going to be like that, but I didn't want that in my mind, right? So we finally found a job. It was like a business development job because I was building my mission, but I had to kind of learn how to do that. But I was okay with it because it's like a challenge, right? Figure this
Right.
out and execute it, right?
So at this point, so your wife must have been a huge influence on your decision to, or kind of whatever sparked that entrepreneurial spirit in you, right?
Yeah,
Like, so you bounced around for a little bit. You're discovering that none of it measures up, right? Because it doesn't.
right,
That's been my experience as well. Everything I've done for someone else since I've gotten out of the Army, it just doesn't move the needle for me. It doesn't just make me want to get out of bed every
right,
morning. And so your wife influencing that, and you realized it was going to take you time to build the mission, right?
right.
Like to set up your own thing. And so I want you to talk about a little bit about, kind of, I guess sometimes I think advice is given that seems counter, right? Like my whole thing, I want to open the door to entrepreneurship for veterans, and I will coach them to do that, right?
Right.
And that's my business. But I think often sometimes they think, well, I have a wife and kids and I'm still going to have a job, and that's not building a business. And I want you to speak to that because you're a prime example, right? Like you went and got this job,
And I still have it.
and also
I still
you
have
still
one.
have this job,
Yeah.
and you have a business as well,
I have a
right?
couple.
Some people would call that a side hustle, but if they're taking fucking taxes from you, it's a damn business.
It is
I don't
a
give a
damn,
shit
yeah.
what you say it is. If somebody is paying you for a good or a service, hello
It's a
business, right?
business. Yeah.
So
It,
so talk about that for us, and really kind of set the tone for, it is okay if you need to get out and go, get a job so that you can focus on building a business if
yeah.
that's what you have to do to survive.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you say that. So when I was walking today, and I've been doing some posting. One of my next posts is going to be about, hey, don't be afraid to have the W-2 job with the side hustle, because as long as that side hustle is your passion, right? If you know, and goes back to my mission. If you know that is your future mission, you gotta do whatever you can to prep for that mission. If you're buying supplies because you have a W-2 job to do that, then you're buying supplies until you get all the supplies that you feel comfortable. I fear, unless you're just shit hot and have a lot of cash, people who just jump out and do their own thing, because it's military execution otherwise is not the same that you have to deal with in the civilian world. right? You run into shit, you're like, somebody make a decision. Okay, we're coming back next week. Somebody make a decision. This is bullshit. We're still there. But, in kind of my path is I had my first job. It was tough. Nobody stood up for you. You were left out there and you would just like, the data is sitting right here why we should do this. But yet you won't do that because you're afraid you have to talk to somebody to get effing permission. That's a bunch of crap. Do it, right? But they're 30 years in, they're 20 years in, and you're like, I don't give a shit. You're keeping us 21 more years doing nothing. So anyway, got into another job which was very important to me because it was helping sailors on submarines. I ended up working on some cool projects for naval power, which was down my pipeline. So my mission kind of overlapped. But again, I got called to go to Iraq, and that gave me some time to think, right? We got, I went to Al Assad and joined base Balad and Kuwait and I don't know, UAE and not Turkey, but another one.
It's crazy to see what all that stuff developed into, because I can remember it was just tents in a desert,
right?
And I was like, this is fucking nuts, dude.
Right.
Where am I right now?
And the way they allow this shit just to happen, right? You're like, are we just really letting this shit happen, right?
Yeah, it's just happening.
It just happens. Yep. And you're like, oh yeah, we're okay with occasional mortar rounds coming in because they do that.
Yeah, no.
And I wasn't there when you're doing all the ass kicking. I was in 2009, 2010 when we're trying to draw down shit, and we're still taking that crap. And I'm like, this is
9 and 10. That was the worst of when. Well, in terms of just not doing what we wanted to be doing, we just played QRF for the entire country of Iraq.
Yeah.
And you could bet your bottom dollar, as soon as the sun goes down, we're going to be out till the sun comes up. That's just, and we're going to go escort the Hodge jingle trucks, all that good stuff, whatever. I'm probably not supposed to say that word on here, so I apologize. That's whatever. But, you're bouncing between all these jobs. So how are you maintaining focus on the mission, right? And now you've got this deployment looming, right? Which is also, so really I'm trying to just paint the picture of what derailment looks like and what, you can have as solid a plan as you want. And anybody in the military should already know this anyway, but Plan A never fucking works ever. As soon as the mission starts, it's fucked.
Right.
So now your plan is basically getting fucked by Uncle Sam again, right? And so, and so, how are you holding on to that dream and that entrepreneurial spirit, and if you are even right,
well, I hadn't hit it all the way, and you're gonna hear how we find out the true entrepreneur. Because my wife, she couldn't have done the family business, but ended up started with our kids. So we had 3 girls. And so when I left, I wrote down everything I knew about the house. Here's your operating binder, honey. And I have great buddies, call me. And, again, unlike when I first went into submarines where we write teletypes and when you get a 30-letter or 30-word sentence or something, oh, I'm okay. See you when you can. I'll call you when I can, right? To, hey, I've got FaceTime or whatever it was back in the Skype, right? We had Skype. You could call. So I could keep up with her, but I had a dick for a commanding officer I had to work for. Total guy was all about himself, not about the mission. Totally would, in the end, it's funny. What comes around goes around. He was a supply corps captain. I don't know how he got put in charge of operations, but he was. I think it was just because that's the mission they got, and they ended up bamboozling all these other line officers to work for him. He hated me. I didn't care. I did my job to 100%, but it was funny. So anyway, long story short, I come back, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm cool. I'm going to take over. And that's when I first realized the whole thing about the family mission. Like it started coming together at that point, right? Mm-hmm. That's when I realized my wife has her shit together because she knew what she needed to do. And it evolved, right? It evolved. And I could not, and I should not have taken that away from her. And so she had that together. It was time for me to keep my step back. I should not have stepped in or tried to be even more than that, right? And without us knowing it, we were developing what I'm saying is this lifestyle mission, right? We've refined it, but we started kind of like that. I get that she's got that. She still to this day knows everything about the finances, and I had to bring in the money and do the operations and do the technical aspect of the house. She's got everything that has to do with the financing and logistics. Absolutely great. Just like we would work out that way. She doesn't like it. We're trying to get big enough so we don't have to do that, but it works, and it works well because she's very patient on those things, as well as smart, where I don't think of that. And I'll tell you, some of our mistakes was Rod not paying attention to what Rod's bought, and that's caused some issues. But God bless her heart, she's worked it through. So anyway, skip forward. We lost all the savings we were working on in 2008. Went to shit when the market crashed, right?
Same here. I bought my first house at 21 in 2006, came back from a deployment, and it's basically worthless.
Worthless.
So, yeah, I totally understand.
So she was the one, and this is why I think it's important to figure out this lifestyle mission. As I talk about those 4 quadrants, we can talk about them later, but the whole financial and physical and mental and spiritual. So she realized, hey, after 3 years, right, which was about the 11, I got back, I've got my shit kind of moving back together. We need to be figuring something else besides the 401k because we're not going to be able to retire, right? And I didn't know, but she's doing the finance, so she knows. And so we started looking, and then we read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So we went down that path, started buying and flipping homes. And at the time, her dad, and this is where we also fail, is listen to your parents. Her dad's like, get into real estate. We're like, yeah, we got this W-2 job, blah, blah, blah. No, smartest man ever. And I tease the shit out of him. But so he started building houses. We started flipping houses, and we're figuring it out. I mean, we're just moving forward. She's the designer. I'm the guy who's planning it out. We got great guys to execute, and we're now we got those houses that we're overpaid for coming on the market. We're learning all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And then boom, 2016, day before. Well, 2016 is when the cancer started coming. Early in April, okay. I had a growth on my neck. My wife had some medical issues that I kind of blew this off. Right? Went saw an ear, nose, throat guy. He said, it looks like this. Nothing really to worry about. So I put it on the back burner. Try to get her all set. And then I looked back like in October of 16. I'm like, it's gotten worse. I'm going to call that doc up and see if I can go get that scan he wanted me to get done. Well, he's like, hey, you didn't go do it then. Why now? Right? Well, I think it's bigger. He's like, okay, we're going to go do the scan. Well, now it's November, right? By the time I could get in to see him, it's November. So
7 months have gone by. You put this off for 7 months.
I started in April. I should have done it then, right? But anyway,
right.
I'm already retired now. Like I said, because at the career time I got out in 2015, I'm like, the paperwork outweighs the mission. That's a bunch of shit. I'm done with that, right? I'm not doing more paperwork, make myself a paper jockey to make somebody want me to be in charge. That's not the way I operate. I operate by being there and other.
Is that a byproduct of making a certain rank on the officer side?
Yeah, when you get up to rank the 05, like I was a commander, I'm like, all of these 05s are out there. And you got guys who polish their resume, take these little Murphy jobs. No, I'm going to go out and train the new people to be better and make them be better people. That was my love of life. And we got these other guys.
It's funny, again, because here's another moment of self-awareness, right? You knew what you wanted to be doing and what you were best at and leaning into that in leading and training, sailors, right? And that's what you wanted to be doing. And so even in the Army, I was blown away when I learned this. And I was probably just a young E5 when I learned it. But I learned that after a company commander in an infantry unit relinquishes his command, which is, I think, 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I can't remember. They don't come back to leading soldiers until they make battalion command at lieutenant colonel. That's an insane amount of time that they're away from leading soldiers. The entire time is staff, war college, and then into battalion leadership. And so I think that's interesting that you realized you didn't want to push papers and you were better at leading sailors.
Yes, they were all
ingrained in me, boat. Right? But a lot of officers, to your point, right? It's literally 04 for us, major, is when they become kind of basically start playing the politics game.
Oh yeah,
and so to me, it sounds like you had no interest in playing that game, right?
I wasn't an ass kicker. If my job didn't speak for me to do what I did, then I didn't need the job, and you didn't need me, right? And that's all. And that goes back to my farm living, right? Look, I don't need accolades. I need to help you get what you need to get done, and we move forward. And that's my upbringing. I mean, farmers did that. Oh, we had a cow get out. All right, everybody get up. Let's go find the cow, right? Well,
and so yeah, definitely. You retired in 2015.
Correct.
What month?
April.
Okay, so 7 months before I was medically retired, November 2nd of 2015. Okay. So this we actually end up having more in common.
Isn't that
right?
funny?
Growing up on the farm, yeah, it's definitely interesting, man. So
well, what's funny? It's April Fool's Day too. I made sure I used that day.
Man. So April of 2015 and retire, and a year later, you are having, so that's when you notice the cancer, right? Yep. So, but you don't know that it's cancer.
No.
And fast forward to November of 2016.
Now we're doing all the tests, right?
I just want to make sure we stay caught up here. It's good, man, because this is all good stuff, and this is it's great, and I want to understand this whole journey. So you've realized, right? Your lovely wife has rubbed off on you on an entrepreneurial sense, and you're working towards this goal of this thing that you see a need for. And I think you're spot on. And I can't wait to talk about what you're actually doing, because I think it is, as we talked offline, it's so important. It's not lessons. But anyway, so now your wife had some health issues and you put her first, right? And there's a common theme here, right? And we're going to talk about this in a minute, but so you put her first and put this thing on the back burner. And so now we're getting this scan done, and walk us through, from the time you get the scan done, that whole process there.
Man, so I got young kids. We go in, and one thing comes back. They take some samples. It's just a cyst. And then they did the CT scan, and there's something on your larynx. So now I have something on my throat and something on my throat. So it's stage 4, right?
And for those of us who aren't well versed in cancer, stage 4 is like absolute worst it can be.
Yeah, it's aggressive. It's once it spreads, or how aggressive that type of cancer is, it goes to stage 4, right?
Okay.
And that's like stage 1. Hey, we're just detecting it. We got some little things. Stage 2. Oh, okay. It's getting more. It's getting more of a formation. 3s. Hey, it's definitely a lump. Well, that was all happening inside. I didn't know, right? Mm-hmm. But it got out here, right? So this is probably going on for maybe 6 or 7 months before it spread. Because it's right on my larynx, and hence you see me drinking all this water. So I think it was 2 days before Christmas, on 2016, we found out for sure it was cancer.
And, oh man! So pretty much a month after you have the scan done. Merry Christmas!
Right, you're going through. You're setting up these dates. You have to go in for biopsies. You're going in for these things. It was kind of you start forgetting what time was. Time starts standing still, and you start figuring out what to do, and then it really stands still. But as my wife says, and I agree with her, that Christmas was one of the best Christmases ever.
So I wanna explore this if you're comfortable doing
Absolutely.
it. I really want you to really talk about what's going through your head when you get this diagnosis, and what mindset shift that has for you. Because I'm willing to bet, and I don't know because we haven't talked about this, and you can verify
Yeah,
that.
we haven't.
I'm willing to bet that is a life-changing moment, and you are not at all the Rod today that you were that day. I
No.
think a vast majority of that Rod is probably gone, and I'm fairly certain that this stage 4 cancer diagnosis right before Christmas was the pivotal event that had this profound mindset shift change. Am I right?
You are correct. Things stop. It sets you back. You're like, what the hell? What haven't I been doing that I need to focus on now that I should have been focusing on for a long time? And I knew it. I saw it, right? I saw it throughout my whole career. Families falling apart, all this stuff. I'm still thinking I'm Rod Blunk, the breadwinner, the king, everything else, right? Now I'm Rod Blunk, I'm soon to be very sick and otherwise, but how's everybody going to handle this?
Possibly dead.
Possibly
right?
dead.
Possibly dead, right? Like
Possibly dead twice.
And so, right. And it's important to, I don't want to cut you off because this is important because you pause, time stops.
Yeah.
And it really does stop when you figure this out or have this profound aha moment. But you really start to look at your life and realize I have not been living life my way. Right. Is it how you felt?
Yeah. I was living my life. I wasn't living a life. And I mean that in a way that a life was fulfilling for my family. I mean, it goes back to my lifestyle, right? I was thinking I was doing what was necessary to do the whole thing. Dad does work. He takes care of camp. But I wasn't realizing, am I missing the kids? Am I not spending the right time with them? Am I not giving them the more time when I should? I'll go do this trip, blah, blah, blah. No, I needed to be more center focused back to that whole unit. And it came more and more to me that the more I was forced and I couldn't do anything is how they came. It was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. My kids are here. I made the thing out of this as I started my treatments and stuff and went down some very things. I was not going to be sad for them. I was going to be their dad who's going to be there with them and positive regardless of how I felt. And that's hard because I had some bad days and I didn't want them to see me as a complainer because you're not going to win cancer if you let cancer beat you mentally. And God damn it, I wasn't going to lose because they were there. They were there. And I was going to make sure I was always going to be there.
I feel that, brother.
And that's where it was my aha. It's like I gotta be there for them. And it meant a lot. I mean, I was doing some soccer coaching and stuff like that, but it really didn't hit home until then. And it really shows the family core value that, you don't know you create those things until you're in those situations. And it really came true that I became at peace. I became at peace because I without knowing it, but not doing what I needed to do it, I had created a family core value of caring and being there and being willing to take the arrows and having them continue to be happy every day because all I wanted to do was make it through that day. I didn't care what the next day was. If I made it through that day and we were going to get up the next day, we were going to get up the next day. And that's what I did. And it was important that I show them that, hey, there's tough freaking days, but that doesn't stop you from making it to the end of the day. And I think that was really a ha-ha moment because I see it in my kids now. They are like, you know, things are tough, but I'm not gonna let this toughness scare me into a hole. And I think that's where that mission is, because I started to realize I had to get that balance back. And I was getting that balance back by being forced to go through the cancer treatments because I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, it's it's uh it's such a tough thing, right? Because we have to go through something incredibly hard to really realize
Yeah.
that we're capable of so much more, right? Like I'm sure, and I don't know because I've never had stage 4 cancer. I haven't had to go through what you went through, but I can imagine there are days where you just do not know how you're going to make it through, right? Like you're just I am exhausted. I can't. I just don't, and you just figure it out, right? Like
Right.
it's like we are capable of so much more than we ever give ourselves credit
Oh
for.
yeah.
And I think the way you probably found your way through those days was realizing like, well, I want to be here for my wife and kids, and I want to demonstrate to them that we are capable of so much more than we are. And what better way to do that than to wake up tomorrow?
Right.
And so you chunk it down, you stop looking 5, 10, 15 years in the future, and you start living in the now. And I think that's the most important thing is when you start living in the now, everything changes.
Everything
Everything
changes.
gets better. Everything falls into place where it's supposed to be. And you really start living this life of
Yeah.
purpose, I think.
Oh yeah. And that's what was so key is okay, wow, we got through this. I mean, there was a day I couldn't get up the stairs, and it was like one of my death days, right? I don't know, 6 weeks into all the radiation chemo. I'm getting ready to do my next round of chemo, right? It's like the last round. It's gray death, cisplatin. It's like one of the worst things you could take. I couldn't walk up a flight of stairs. Like literally, and I'm like, something's not right. And I was, and I felt good. I actually felt good that weekend. But yeah, Dad feels good. Dad's gonna show him, hey, I'm strong. I'm gonna, I'm whatever. I'm gonna clean my fish pond. Stupidest thing ever. I I ended up causing blood clots to, I guess, release in my body, and I ended up with a double pulmonary embolism, which I didn't know. And the nurses, thank God for nurses, because they pay attention to you. I was in there every day getting fluids because I couldn't drink, right? But um, they said, hey, his blood ox is bad. My wife is like, he's not right, and they're like, no, he's anxious, and my wife's like, he's never been anxious once during this thing. He's anxious. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with my husband. And the nurse does the blood ox. She's like, holy shit, we need to get him over to the CT. They do the CT. Funny story. Here we go. Cancer can't always be ugly. It can also be funny. So I got a tube in my arm, for whatever you have to put in, for IVs or otherwise. And next thing you know,
We like dogs here. No worries, man. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, we can edit out anything. So, yeah, it's good. Yes, sir. Yeah, for sure.
So here I am. Nurse grabs me. Other nurses come run over. They grab me, greet me on this wheelchair, put me in the thing. I didn't know there's so many tunnels underneath hospitals, but holy shit, there's a bunch of tunnels underneath hospitals. They drop me in this tunnel. They zoom me over to the other portion of the hospital, and I'm getting ready to do a CT scan. And when they do a CT scan, they got to shoot you with some chemicals so they can get the things to highlight, right? Well, I said, hey, look at that. I've got a pick in my arm. Let's go ahead and use that. And that's what the nurses are like. We'll just use that. The person's like, nah, we're going to make a new one. And I'm like, well, all my veins are pretty much gone because, they've been shooting them up the whole time. So, okay, here we go. So you go in there, like, okay, when you go in, you're going to feel a little bit of a pressure in your arm because we're going to shoot the stuff in the arm. And then we'll be able to do CT scan. All right, let's go. I'm good. We can make this happen. You go underneath and you hear this, uh-oh. I'm like, oh, what do you mean, uh-oh? Because you can talk to them, right? And they're like, well, we blew your vein. Like,
oh, no.
So what does that mean? Well, we got to put it in the other arm. Oh, okay. Well, you come out, and holy cow, I look like Popeye now. I got this arm that's all kind of got all this juice in it. And I'm like, all right, well, I got another arm, right? I'm not going to let it go down. Might as well figure it out. I'm like, all right. So round 2, here we go. So they go and do that. Then they come back and they're like, put you in and they slide you out. And then I'm back over to get fluids. Well, during that time, the guys are like, ooh, that doesn't look so good. I had a almost complete blockage with the double pulmonary embolism. So I went from there and I got myself a new little room for about a week of doing blood thinners and shots and all that.
Moral of the story, folks, if you're going through chemotherapy for stage 4 cancer, probably not a good idea to go clean your pond.
That's exactly the moral of the story. It really is. Like, hey, if you feel good, take the good day, right? And I'm like showing the kids, here's how you do this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Stupidest thing ever.
So how long is chemo treatment? Like, how long was your treatment?
So with laryngeal, so this is one of those packed ones, right? So this is I had to fight the VA for 3 years before the PACT Act. Mm-hmm. I was in, if you go and look at the stats, and this is another reason why I'm doing this whole lifestyle mission stuff too, is because of fighting the VA. The whole, I'll come back to that. Laryngeal cancer.
No, this is great. This is great. So, because I want to understand. So are you going through the VA for all of this, all of the treatment for the cancer?
I was the stupidest person ever. I will tell you that. And you know what? If there's veterans out there listening right now, and if there's anybody on active duty, you're a stupid person if you come out of the military thinking that you're not broke dick. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I was a guy who came out. I'm not broke dick. I'm a stud. They made me a stud. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I would encourage anybody who's getting out, whether you think you are or not, see if you're entitled to anything, because yes, you're not broken. I promise.
Yes, and by God, talk to somebody. Talk to me. Talk to Adam. I'll give you any time of day. You need to look at your stuff, guys. I'm telling you, because it's hard. It's hard when you're out. I didn't do anything. I walked away from whatever. And I had stuff in there that made me like 40% just by having that. But anyway, you don't want to do that because now you're fighting to get back into the system and everything's going to be, no, you can't prove that you had these ailments when you left. Well, it's in my record. Well, yeah, but you can't say anything. Okay, we'll come back.
Yeah, just mitigate that and do that on your way out. It's worth the time and effort that it takes to do it.
Yes.
Even though I know you're excited to get out, your world is about to get turned upside down, and that excitement's going to turn into panic in about 3 months. So,
yes.
So you didn't use the VA for any of the cancer treatment?
No, I was at a private one, so I'm losing.
Yeah, you're losing money because because I agree with your stance on the VA. I'm in Florida, and the VA here is by far and away better than any of
Oh
the
yeah,
other
there's some
ones
great
I've used
VAs.
before.
Yeah.
However, it still has its problems, and I do think the VA is in need of some serious revamp. But you're now you're now fighting to get back all of what it costs you because they have linked your cancer to the PACT Act and burn pits, and so how long was the cancer treatment?
So that's where we
What
go
did
back.
that
Yeah.
cost you?
So the typical cancer treatment is you get 3 rounds of this cisplatin, which is really bad shit. They call it the gray death, right? Literally, you turn gray when you take this stuff. Like it's a whole day process. They have to fill you full of fluids just so they can give it. The nurse comes in, she's fully clothed up, head mask, all this stuff, fully geared up and all these stuff just to inject you with the gray death. And then my wife said, as soon as they gave it to me, over the next hour, I turned gray. And then they give you stuff so you don't throw up. So that's the gray death. But along with that, these are your standard things, right? And they say the chemo doesn't kill the cancer. It just makes the cancer more susceptible to the radiation. There's a lot of stuff. We can go down that rabbit hole at a different time. But you get 7 weeks of radiation treatments. So since I had 2 spots, I had 35 shots of radiation for 7 weeks at a time. So I would go, and it was 5 days. So you go 5 days, you go Monday through Friday, and then you got the weekend off. And you go Monday through Friday, and you got the weekend off. So they make this Silence of the Lambs mask to hold your head down, right? And then you're on the slab, you're on the metal slab, and they'll play some good music. Like I had a little Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that playing in the background just to take you off. But you hear the hum. Thing moves.
Just nuking your insides.
Oh yeah.
Just microwaving you. That's incredible.
And then I truly was a redneck. I mean, the whole area was burned out right here. I can't grow any hair anymore.
They're targeting it, right? They're specifically targeting where it's at, right? So this is like concentrated
right on you. Yeah. And there's better ones, but the one that was near us that I didn't have to drive like an hour. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm lucky to have one nearby because I ended up, I couldn't, after week 2, I couldn't swallow. I couldn't eat, and I had initially I was like against the feeding tube. Well, thank God I listened to my wife again and put in the feeding tube because I went from 205 pounds down to 139 actually. So I was I looked like an old man with a saggy ass, no muscles, no neck. Like it was.
So this just takes over your life. I didn't realize it was 5 days a week for 7 weeks. So for the better part of almost 3 months, because really afterwards for the next 3 weeks, you're going to be sick as a dog, looking like death, trying to recover. So what is your mindset going through all of this, other than just being tough, having bad days, being an example of what you can get through? Like, are you still thinking about the business? Are you just focused on?
I got rid of the business mindset. My mindset was, what can I physically go do with my family, and where? Like, one of the things you see, I carried this little plastic thing that they give you from the hospital for throwing up in it because I would throw up all the time because I would through the feeding tube, trying to do alternative food, there's a whole scheme on this stuff. But anyway, if anybody runs into or going in for throat cancer, please reach out to me. I'll tell you my I'm actually writing a book on it because there's some funny things I want to do, but there's some shitty things too. But anyway, it's called Beat Buddy. I had to do it. I had to do it because people need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so I would carry this little throw up bag, and I would go to whatever I could. If it was a basketball game, a swimming match, indoor soccer game, I tried to get there. and I would try to stay as long as I could. And
Right.
you know, friends and family would bring my kids back or whatever if I could do it. And then I got to a point
So very
I
much
couldn't do it.
Yeah, very much focused on living in the now through the whole treatment. I'm sure that continues afterwards. And so let me ask you this. Do you think, because it sounds like your wife and your children were super supportive through all of this, I can imagine that this is taking a hell of a financial toll because you're not working. You've shut down the idea of the business. This is going to affect emotionally and mentally your wife, right? Who is, you know, for all intents and purposes at this point, while you're going through this, the breadwinner and the one that's going to have to pick up the slack or whatever, which isn't really realistic because I'm sure she's facilitating getting you to these Monday through Friday appointments and then, you know, all the other responsibilities of taking care of somebody who's going through chemotherapy at home. Cause I imagine you're probably not doing a lot for yourself. You're not able to. And so are you taking that financial hit? Cause
We did. So like I said, we were fixing
So let's talk about that because the whole point here is you went through some really dark shit, right? And you've now made it through the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point of why we're here. And you're this entrepreneur and that is purpose for you. And through all of this dark shit, which is the only way to get out of it, is through it. You discovered, you know, a purpose, and that purpose lies in entrepreneurship and really painted, you know, the hard shit painted a picture of what you're supposed to be doing for people.
Absolutely.
Which now is your passion. And so that's what I want to understand, you know, how significant was it that you had the support of your wife? Because, you know, there's plenty of wives, and I'm sure you can attest to this for 27 years of service, that you know, I watched dudes' wives leave them after they stepped on an IED and lost both their legs, right? Like, you know, so do you think that played a huge part in you being strong enough to make it through? And also, like, you know, just speak about the support that you did have, because, you know, in business, in life, you have to have people around you that support you. It's so important to build a support system and a network of people that you can rely on. And I want to understand what that looked like for you and how that shaped your journey. And I want everybody else to understand, because I think it's important.
Well, you know, so all my family's back in Idaho, so it was hard. We were not well off back home. We're good, but we're not well off. Like my parents couldn't travel out and stuff like that. You know?
Well, yeah, like flying out across the country.
Yeah,
you know, that's like a $3,000.
Yeah, you know, especially back then too, it wasn't cheap, and so I didn't. My wife's family's all in Maryland, so it was we had the commune, right? We had everybody around. We ended up, what was luckily for us, the year before my cancer, we moved right next door to my wife's sister. Absolutely. We're like, I don't know how this is going to go. I'm like, well, we're going to roll the dice and see how it goes. But by the grace of God, we got the house. We got it as a foreclosure, right? We're looking and flipping and stuff like that. So we got it as a foreclosure. And they were very instrumental of, hey, Rod's got to go to the hospital tonight. He's spitting blood or whatever. And they would come over and take care of the kids. So that, and we would do the same. Like we're dealing with some stuff on now, helping them with some stuff that's just happened just recently as well. So it's been the best thing ever, right? Absolutely best thing ever. My wife's sister married another Navy guy, so we've got very much that mindset of being there. And yeah, it's been awesome, like a brother to me. And so anyway, long story short. That relationship, like I said, my wife is my best friend, right? She became my best friend, rather. And that's why I think in this mission, and you start filling out those roles and you define where you think everybody's in, you're able to trust more, and you're able to understand more besides the sex of marriage or God, I look like a 70-year-old man now. Is my wife going to leave me because I'm not sexy enough, right? That's bullshit. And that's where we got to get rid of these things. And you need to figure and these are things that just like in the conversation is, how do you feel that you can carry on a conversation eventually? I mean, there's always going to be the initial sex and all that good fun stuff. And that's fun as hell. But before you go into the big dive of the marriage thing is, where do you fit together? And those are hard learning lessons. But let's say you're in a marriage now. Maybe all you need to do is figure out the mission together and say, hey, I really think these are. And then maybe you'll figure out, hey, we have a problem here. Like finances are always a problem. Like we had a finance problem. And I realized I just got to stop doing stupid shit. That's pretty easy to figure it out. But if I wanted to fight it, we wouldn't be married, but it didn't make sense, right? I've only fought with my wife 3 times, and all 3 of them because I couldn't read her mind. She didn't realize she had to tell me what she was thinking. And me, I had to realize, holy shit, don't be so stupid. That was pretty easy to figure out.
For sure.
But,
I heard this really good quote the other day that said, marriage is 2 independent people who figure out how to make their lives intersect.
Exactly.
I thought that was super powerful. And I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was Alex Hormozy who said, he's like on fire right now.
Yeah,
so
he's crushing things right now.
He's got a lot of good knowledge, and there's a lot of things, if you really pay attention, that you can learn, and you're regurgitating them here, probably not even having heard that video. So let's talk about, 7 weeks, and then you get the news, right? You're in remission.
So 7 weeks to say we don't see anything, right? You don't see anything. Okay. So side note, and I kind of alluded to a little bit. Looking at let's just jump back before the 7 weeks. Looking at paths of where am I going to go? What were my options? My options was surgery or the standard, right? Well, there's always the other one that I'm like, no, do I go like a holistic type of way? I didn't know enough then about that, but I was interested, but it was too short, right? Things are coming so fast, too short. So we looked into surgery and talked to the guy, and he's like, look, where it's at, if I go and do surgery, there's an 85% chance you can't talk. And this is like the top guy, like recommended.
Question for you,
right? I'm like, So he said, look, I recommend that you do the surgery, do the radiation and chemo, right? So we start looking about some stuff, start looking a little bit in this alternative, and I ended up getting, my wife said, let's try this. And it's not, we're going to put frankincense on your little buddy. That was my little buddy right here. And so we started putting frankincense oil, right? One of the 3 wise men's gifts to baby Jesus, frankincense oil. Start rubbing frankincense oil on my neck, and I would put a little drop underneath my tongue. That was so between the first time we went and saw the radiologist, and then I think it was maybe 2 weeks later, my neck had gotten smaller just by rubbing frankincense on it. And so she goes,
so now you're curious.
Yeah, you're like, I couldn't verify it. I'm like, I think it's gotten smaller. Now, obviously, I'm not putting it down my throat to get on the other one to try to kill it, but so we get the radiologist actually says, what have you been doing? And my wife and I kind of smirk. We're like, we put a little frankincense oil on it. She goes, wow. And this is where it starts to get a little crazy. As a doctor, I can't recommend looking at other things, but I'm not going to tell you to stop doing what you think you need to do. And that was like one of the first earth things that I'm like, vitamin C packs, those are really good for fighting cancer. But guess what? Not covered by insurance.
So something else. I participate in fasting. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's ultra powerful. And I've committed to doing a 7-day this year.
Oh, 7? Holy cow.
Yeah. I believe that it'll reset everything. I had a buddy who was staying with me for a few months earlier this year, and he did a 7-day, and I watched it cure his allergies. He was sniffling, and pollen season here in Florida, it's bad, and his whole life. And during that 7-day fast, I didn't watch him blow his nose more than twice. His allergies were completely gone, and the pollen kept getting worse. So I have kind of a interesting question, like, because you're going through radiation, you've got a feeding tube, you're never hungry, right? You probably don't feel like eating. I wonder how much of kind of fasting plays a role in helping cure cancer. And I've read some things there are people out there, for those of you who aren't familiar with fasting, that will go 40 days. And most famous one that's all over the internet right now that I can think of is the rapper Kevin Gates. And he talks about a lot of the power of long fasts. And so I've always thought, if I got cancer, I'm just going to try and starve it. Because I do believe in the power of that. Do you think that there's anything to that, especially knowing, for those that are listening, Rod is eventually going to come to the conclusion that holistic healing is way better. And
there is a lot.
I'm of that same conclusion. So spoiler alert, I guess I'm a little late on that one, my bad. But, since we're talking about it, let's talk about it. And do you think that played a factor? Knowing what you know now about the frankincense, and I'm sure you tried some other things.
Yeah. So I did the vitamin C packs. I would, and we'd have to go drive to get to a guy, and that was after I was just doing IVs. Like literally, I was living on water. So back to the feeding tube. You go and see a nutritionist, and they tell you, okay, you're going to get a feeding tube if you go that way, or whatever. You got to try to get, your calories in to keep your weight, right? They tell you to pour Ensure into your feeding tube. So anybody out there, just go look at the first three ingredients to Ensure: water, corn syrup, sugar, and oil.
Yep. Sugar. Fucking sugar.
And I'm like, so as a matter of fact, I was telling you about the book I was kind of writing. Right? I'm doing a book right now on the feeding tube and that factor of they tell you to take Ensure. And so we were like, we got to figure something else out. And so we did, because we needed some caloric intake. And and I couldn't eat. And the other thing is, my body wouldn't allow me to eat because I would throw up. Hence my little bags I was running around. But we needed to use something. So we had to find a company, and they're out there, or you can actually find them but they basically make like a soybean or a bean meal that is all messed up with beans, and you use it with water, and you basically make a very fine liquid. It's more liquid than it is anything, just to get protein into your body to help the good cells fight the bad cells. So yeah, I lost 60 some odd pounds, right? It probably did help. Also being in good health. They said if I had been a smoker, I probably wouldn't have felt as bad, because I'm used to feeling bad. And that didn't make sense to me until I realized it could make sense to you. If you're always feeling bad, to your thing about cleansing, if you always feel bad, you have no idea what it's like to feel good. I was doing triathlons. I just did my Ironman in 2014. So it wasn't like I was out of shape, right? And all those things.
So you knew the difference between feeling good and
correct,
feeling bad, right? Whereas I was a smoker and a drinker, and to your point, those first three ingredients. So I believe in the power of holistic healing after my ayahuasca journey, and at some point I will discuss that at length on this show with someone. Yeah. But for me, I'm a sugar addict. Sugar is my thing. And it was bad. I went to Peru, 311 pounds, and weighed in today before we recorded this at 225 pounds. So in 9 months, I've lost 86 pounds. And a large portion of that is because I fast and I cut sugar out of my diet. There are other things that go into that, and that's not kind of your area. The episode that's coming out on May the 12th will be discussing that episode with Anthony Towndrow. He's an outdoor adventure wellness coach. Nice. And so that's the other aspect of my journey. So that's why I was curious, because I do still to this day, I work out hard every day, 4-mile walks, and then some body weight, about 45 minutes to an hour with pull-up bars, kettlebells, plyo box, that kind of stuff. And I still fast for an average. This week, I think I'm at 19 hours. Usually it's 20. I try to make 20 every day. I just kind of listen to my body now, though.
I fast too.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just wanted to kind of ask you that, and in the cancer treatment, because obviously you still need to eat some
Yeah.
calories, right? Like especially when you're destroying your immune system and everything else. But I often wonder how much knowing
I think
you
I
know
think it has a big factor. I think there's a lot that is put in the food today that has impacts to how your body will actually create cancer. Everybody has cancer in your body. It's what are the contributing factors that causes that one cell to go nuts,
to wake
to wake
up, right?
up and become a breeder,
Yep.
right?
I didn't know
Yeah,
that. In fact, my buddy who did the 7-day fast, he told
yeah.
me that. He said everybody has
Everybody
cancer.
has
It's just
cancer.
what are you doing to wake the cancer cells up, or what do you have genetically? Because obviously
Right.
genetics is going to be a part of it, and you're just not going to be able to avoid it. So no, that's interesting. So you make it through the chemo, and they say we don't see anything. So how long, like what happens between then and they say you're in remission?
So for for throat cancer like mine, you have to get to the 2 year point.
Okay.
About the 2 year point, and they feel that you've got an 80% chance that you're not getting it back.
Okay. So when did they tell you that they didn't see any more cancer? What was the date on
So
that?
well, throat cancer, you end up getting scoped I think it was every week I was getting scoped. And what I mean by getting scoped is
Fuck.
they numb your nose up, and they put the scope up, down your nose, down your throat, and stare at where the cancer was. Like literally, my wife would do it. It's the worst feeling ever. I hated it. It's a scope. She gets to see it. I'm leaning back like this. They're shoving it up my nose. You feel it. It hurts. But they go down and take a look at it. Right. This one's gone. This one's totally gone. Um, and they continue to do that. So every week for the first 9 months, you go every week. And
Okay.
then you go, okay, we're gonna go, or maybe it was 6 weeks, or for every week for the first 6 months, then every 2 weeks, and you just stage it out. So that by the time you get through it, you're like going every three, and then you go at 2 years. They're like, okay, we think we're good, and then you go where you're going every 3 months, then they're like 4 months, and they're like 5 months, and then you're at every year. And then after that,
Okay.
like they'll say, okay, like just literally 7 years, I just got done with my oncologist. Hey, you're good. So I guess it's
No
seven
more. No more
years,
visits for
right?
you. So 7 years. It's taken 7 years for them to no more. We don't need to check
Right.
up on
You're
you. We're
in, they
confident
call it
that this is
remission,
gone.
right? You're always in remission, right?
Right.
But he's like, look, I don't need to see anymore.
Cool.
So
Okay. So I guess that's kind of hard. I was trying to establish a timeline. So you're going through the chemo where you're just focusing on the here and now and being present, and probably doing a lot of soul searching and,
hmm
and, and all that stuff, right? Right. Rightfully so. Getting right with God, all that stuff. And then at what point did you start really, first of all, gain enough strength and energy to start focusing some of your attention? And I assume, coming out of that, it was full steam ahead on, obviously you had to get a job because now you're in a financial hole, I'm sure. And on top of that, you still probably have a lot more clarity on what it is you want to build and what kind of business you need to be, trying to form and build the foundations on. So, how much time has passed? Like, how long did it take you to really jump back into that? Was it
it
pretty
was
immediate
before I could
or?
start really working. Took another good 4 to 6 months. Like
Okay.
I have what they call chemo brain. I can't recall names very well. I still have that. I still focus on that. I take lion's mane daily and some other mushrooms in my coffee to help my mental clarity. Um, um, I lost my saliva glands because they just destroy them. So I'm always drinking water. I drink over. People say, "Hey, you drink a gallon of water." I drink about 2 gallons of water. I actually have to take salt because I dilute myself so much. I don't have enough salt in my system anymore. Right? Yeah. I just totally cut out. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, I pee him out all the time.
Yep. I still have my saliva glands, and I'm still doing that. I don't think I'm quite at 2 gallons, but definitely over a gallon
So
for sure.
we were still kind of flipping because we had some guys that we had a couple houses when I got diagnosed. We were in the process of flipping 2 houses. We kept kind of doing that as well. And I got back with the company I was with, and I got back in there and slowly building back up. So we're doing that. And then we had the aha moment. We're like, fuck, flipping houses isn't going to get us where we need to go. And my wife at the time, she took a job to be a wholesaler to flip 2 houses, but she had to travel a long time away. So we're separating each other again. And so this isn't good. And I'm like, I'm not happy. She's coming home. Her vibes are off, right? And it hurts me to see her vibes off because that's not what we are anymore, right? So we're working on trying to get that. And I could tell that she wasn't happy. She's a go-getter, and the company was destroying her, and all this stuff they had. She's about helping people. They're about making the bottom dollar. Totally different mission.
Yeah, so much of what corporate America is anymore, which is, again, kind of to my point, entrepreneurship is a path back to purpose because you get to control all of that.
You're exactly right. So one of her people who was buying a lot of houses said, hey, you know what, Kristen? You need to look at self-storage. And so we got into a mastermind because we had learned a lot on construction, all this stuff, what we were doing. But we needed to accelerate because now we're older, right? I'm getting older. And so we joined a mastermind to do self-storage. But we didn't, we luckily were flipping houses to help us offset the cash that we outlaid to go through the cancer. It took, outside of like insurance that we still had, it took like another $30,000 to $40,000. I mean, I again, goes back to the VA. I have no idea how to figure that out with the VA because I didn't put my claim in on a timely fashion. Such bullshit. Anyway, because they should pay for that. Now that it's all related, they should pay for that. And I'm sure there's a way to do it, but gosh damn it, there's no way I can just easily find that way. And if you try to call them, you can't call them. And there's nobody going out there and saying, well, this is what you got to do. Right. So anyway.
And so this is the birth. This is the catalyst for Wealth to Warriors, correct?
Yes. All this stuff is like,
and so,
right.
So yeah. So because you're having to cut through immense amounts of red tape to figure out how to get something that has been linked to your service, right? And is threatening to essentially financially.
Yeah, it was
right?
bad.
Like $40,000 is a lot of money. It really is a lot of money when you're just working a W-2 job and living life. It's not a lot of money when you learn what's possible.
Oh yeah.
I'll say,
well,
right?
That money could have been me buying something at 10% of that, and then getting that paid back by it's lost in ether, right? That money's never coming back.
Yeah. And so Wealth to Warriors is born in frustration with filing your claim.
No, actually, it was kind of funny. That the mindset was born. The execution was not.
Okay, so walk us from mindset shift to execution, because I know what you're doing is essential, and I think there's a lot of value to get there, and I want to make sure we provide all of that value with what you're doing. So walk us through mindset to execution, and kind of, if it took a long time or whatever, why you think it took a long time to actually execute it.
So now all those pieces are floating through my head, right? We've kind of got all those parts and pieces going in there. And I'm realizing that I was off spiritually. My mental mindset wasn't there. I wasn't reading books. No, it wasn't there. Physically, I felt pretty good, right? I was trying to get back in. I mean, I'm down to 140 pounds. I'm going to come back up. I'm 195 now, so I've got myself back into fitness and as much as I can do. I have some limitations with being able to breathe and stuff like that from, the embolisms and stuff. But I do like you. I'm out walking daily with my dog, or now I'm getting to running with my dog, and then I'm doing the second workout I'm doing down in the basement with some bikes and some weights, And then there's something about movement and being physical that helps your mental, that help, and your spiritual. All those are wrapped around each other. And we can go back to that. Where was I going with this thing? Little chemo brain. So what started building up is we started talking more and more. And then I started realizing that, I'm at all these masterminds, and Kristen and I are the team. Like, we're the team. And there's other guys. There's a guy, an amazing guy doing a $1 billion company, building it. And they're companies or they're focused, they're partners or otherwise. And it's Kristen and I as a team. And then I started thinking, well, we're a team because we're meant to be a team. And there's a lot of teams like me in the military. And I'm like, holy shit. We need to reach out to the spouses of the military now, or the groups, whatever it is, and train those spouses how to own and operate a storage facility, or how to own and operate a triple net retail store or a space or something like that, hey, look, 401k, it can screw you and you can't even access it. You're not going to be able to use that. You may want to look at an asset that you can build upon. It's going to get you money back. If you have a W-2, if you're in the Army military right now, you should be looking at an asset that's going to provide you income on a transition. Keep with the TSP, but figure out where your asset needs to be and move that on. If you're going to start doing some flipping, I met a great lady doing some flipping of houses. She's a spouse. But anyway, get the spouses involved. Stop giving them the military job. Oh, you can get a job when you transfer. No, give her that mindset where she learns a skill set that creates your next mission footprint in the financials, so you can keep all the mental, physical, and spiritual together, because it's there. You're not fighting over the financials. You've got that sound and all that other stuff, reading the books, getting yourself fit, believing in each other, and just being so much energy together. You guys will crush it. And we don't tell you this, but you will. And that's why all that started to come together. And then all of a sudden, I'm trying to do it. I'm like, F it. I'm going to do it. And one of my buddies, who's listening to me with my passion on, he's like, why don't you have the company started yet? I said, I'm a chicken shit. And I realized all I realized was I was my own worst enemy, and I was tripping over my own feet. And I said, I'm just going to do it. My wife said, you got to do it because that's where you're meant to be. And that's why I started it. And that's what I'm doing. And right now I've got, as we start to grow, and you're part of this now, Adam, is putting that team that's willing to help and guide and structure the efforts for folks to end up to be their own boss, right?
It's so important.
Oh my God, it's so important.
Said. And so what I want you to do, tell everybody what Wealth Warriors is, what you're doing, what your program's about, and then I want to ask a ton of questions, really referring back to some things that you've said in the conversation. And I think you'll like the way that I do this, but and how it kind of shaped the growth and everything and what it takes to run a business. And one last comment, you said your wife said you're doing what you're meant to be doing, and at times I have questioned what I'm doing with this show and wanting to coach veterans in entrepreneurship and psychedelic integration and addiction recovery, and letting that imposter syndrome creep in and really doubting myself. And she's like, you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't meant to be doing it. And it's like, man, that's to have a wife or somebody that close to you. It doesn't have to be your wife. My brother has said the same thing to me, and my brother is not interested in business. He's probation and parole officer in the state of Pennsylvania, and all he cares about is raising his kids.
Right.
And that's fine.
That is fine for him.
But he's like, I get frustrated, and I talk to my brother, and he's there for me. And he's like, man, dude, you wouldn't be doing it if you weren't meant to be doing it. He's like, if there's one thing I know about you, this community means the world to you. And there's no better person to be doing it. So, it speaks to like what you said about being afraid, because you're chicken shit to start it. It's like, how can I be chicken shit? I just survived stage 4 cancer. right? Like the odds were stacked against me. That's way harder than what I'm talking about doing. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I touched on that because I think that's important, and it speaks to having a support system. And so tell everybody what Wealth to Warriors is, what the program is, how you help veterans or anybody really, and how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in all that, because I do get a lot of questions about more brick and mortar. I like the digital side of things. I like the freedom to be able to travel. And I know you can do that in what you're doing, but also like triple net and storage facilities, it doesn't resonate with me. It's just not interesting.
It's not sexy.
So it's yeah. And I think that's what I just something about my brain that just like, whatever, when I have money, I'll just pay somebody to invest in that shit.
Well, you got to remember,
right? Like I understand the value in it, but like, I don't want to start a business that way. Right. And so I do get a lot of questions about, storage or real estate, and I can't answer those questions. And I'm very honest that I can't answer those questions, but so much of what we do is networking and meeting people like you. And so now I will have those answers, or at least I can send them to somebody that I know, like, and trust that will take care of them and give them those answers.
Absolutely. So it's interesting what you're saying on that is, got to remember, storage isn't my love either. Right?
Right.
Storage is a stepping stone to the campus of lifestyle mission. And that's what it's there for, right? I know that it's easy. It's not sexy. And that's why when I'm talking about storage, it's meant to give the mindset of enabling that family unit of an asset class that's not going to take all their time to execute and run, that they can do remotely, like my wife and I do. And that's what I do. Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to Warriors to Wealth.
I've been saying it backwards this whole show. I apologize. That's on.
What's that? Warriors to Wealth?
I've been saying wealth to warriors.
It's Warriors to Wealth.
It's Warriors to Wealth. My bad.
Yeah,
that's on
Warriors
me.
number 2.
I'll fix that. Yeah.
No worries. I say it so many times it just rings off. I'm like, all right. So I first came up with this, and it's been about a year now that I've really had it into my thing. Like I was saying, okay, chicken shit, right? And it started off as Soldiers to Wealth, and then I was talking to some folks, and they're like, well, you're not Army, Rod. And you're not, and it makes it sound like it's only Army focused. I'm like, oh yeah, well, we're all warriors. I'm going to change the name Warriors to Wealth, right? And
that's a free little branding lesson.
You're exactly right. Free branding lesson. And thank God I talked to people about, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. It looked cool to me. I was like, oh yeah. And you'll see it out there. If you guys go look on Facebook, I have a Facebook page called Soldiers to Wealth. And now I tell you to go look over to Warriors of Wealth because it's there. I even have some own stuff on it. But so all this stuff started coming together. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it, right? And then I was like, okay, well, let me talk about the mission. So the mission was, how am I going to, and this is the mission creation. How am I going to get people to understand they need to open up their mind and be willing to look at finances and set themselves up on a financial path, but work on their mental and physical at the same. But the spiritual, I came back to my spiritual, how God just kind of pushed me through this path. And I said, that's kind of like 4 things. So these are like 4 focus areas. So I started focusing on these 4 focus areas. You got to get yourself so you're physically capable of making every day count. All right. And then it's like, my wife started buying me some books. I started reading. I'm like, holy shit. I didn't realize how much I actually like to read, right? And so I started reading into these books. And then so that's next changing my mental. I had problems trying to remember stuff. So I'm like, I got to fix my brain anyway. So I got to read. And so those are the spiritual and all those. And then the financials, like, because I got so sick, we couldn't take a hit like that. So we needed something that didn't require all this, she had to take care of me again for something else, that it was kind of easy to run. And that's where the storage, we looked at some RV parks and we looked at mobile homes, and we still look at them, right? We're still interested in them, but the easiest for us to get in was self-storage. So anyway, mission was getting kind of built. And then I'm like, okay, now I got these 4 areas I got to focus into. And that kind of comes into my emblem on my website. What is the mission? And the mission then became, hey, look, the mission of Warriors to Wealth is to identify and enable our military, our first responders, and our veterans and their spouses to identify that mission and move forward on execution. Period.
For sure.
Right.
And I love your are you calling them the four corners, or what did you?
I call them the quadrants of the circle, the quadrants of the unfocused bullseye.
Straight from Kiyosaki's book, right? Like the cash flow quadrant. When you read it, it makes a lot of sense, and I see that in your brand. And so, what I want to talk about is it's very similar to another veteran creator that I've met. I have the pleasure of being a guest on his podcast, the Acknowledge to Action podcast, next week. And he has a similar philosophy, which he's given me permission to use because it really resonates. And it's MEPS with 2 P's, right? Now, we all know what MEPS is because we've all been through one, right? And his 5 pillars are mental, emotional, physical, what's social, and spiritual. Sorry, it's MEPSS. I may mess that up. Yeah. So, and I think the more of these that I do and the more people I talk to, I see all 5 of those elements being cores or foundations of what they're trying to build. And it really means that you are the core and the foundation of what you're trying to build, because all of those require you to do a massive amount of work on yourself before you can start doing a massive amount of work on the thing that you want to build. Right. And so I love where you're going with that. And so now you're building, right? Like this thing's happening, you're doing this. And so you mentioned earlier in the conversation, when you were deployed, your commander was a dick and he just cared about himself. Right. And I think this is important because leadership is one of those high leverage skills that translates really well into business. And it's essential to have when you're going to build a business. You have to be able to lead yourself, but then you're going to get to a point where you have to be able to lead and manage a team of people to help you, because regardless of what anybody says, you don't do this alone. You may be alone for the vast majority of it. And that's a very real reality, right? Is you are lonely doing this, but networking and is such a big part of that. And we're going to touch on that in a minute. But that toxic leadership, I think, is important. It's necessary because, to me, everything's about balance, right? You don't want too many highs and you don't want too many lows. You just kind of want to ebb and flow across that line. And so I think toxic leadership is necessary to teach us what not to be as leaders. Would you say that influenced you a lot in turning you into the type of leader that you are for your business and for these veterans who are coming to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back with a lot of my background of just being a farm kid and helping out, right? And just do the right thing, right? That was it. But watching that guy, and that was kind of the reason why, I had been selected as a commander, so E4 to E5 and for that tour. And I'm like, if this is the kind of people that are making captain, I'm not doing this shit. This is, we had good guys, but I watched too many of these paper polishing guys that, they put themselves out in front like, hey, everybody's done the 80% hard and they're worn out. Oh, I'll take the last 5% and get you over there. And then they say, look what I did. I'm number 1. And you're like, on the backs of all these guys. This is bullshit. Right. Yeah. So he was just, it was wrong. And it just reinforced, no, I don't need to be in something that's going to promote that. I need to be the guy building the better thing for others to execute to. And that's really why I'm like, I'm done. And a lot of guys, really? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, one of the best, my last job was training leadership to the younger officers coming up, right? They're going to go out and be department heads. And I and during that time of this training, I'm like, I got a bigger thing to do. This coaching, or you call it leadership training or coaching that I was doing, it was great. And I loved it all together, but I'm like, we got a whole bunch more people besides these guys that need this. And, we got guys that got to get away from that paperwork drill to make themselves look good to become leaders, because we don't make leaders, we make paper guys. And you could see that. And now, and I hate to say now we're too fluffy to even be able to take freaking criticism on how shitty of a job you're doing. Look, tell me I'm doing a shitty job. And also, if you're going to tell me that, give me some ideas of what I'm going shitty on. Just don't say I'm shitty and walk away. You got people, they're learning. Okay, at what detriment? Really? I mean,
right. No, and you're absolutely right. If you want to get into business, be prepared to accept feedback, because it's the only way you learn and grow. And I promise you're going to get a lot of feedback you don't like. But if you take a step back and look at it for what it is and who it's coming from, I'm sure you'll learn some lessons in it, and your product, whatever that may be, will be that much better.
Absolutely.
And so it's awesome that you learned that lesson. You mentioned masterminds when you were talking about, between idea and execution. And I think this is an important thing, right? We're willing to go spend $60,000 on a college education after we get out, and then not use that degree that we get. How much did you pay for these masterminds, if at all? And
we were in.
I'm just curious.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. I'm trying to think. So I've spent a few $1,000s on courses to learn what I've learned over the course of my time, and it is so much better than my college education. It's helped me so much more. And so I'm just trying to paint a picture of how important networking and attending masterminds and capitalizing on opportunities that are put in front of you. And I get it. I know, when I dropped $1,000 on my first course, I had reservations. And it's scary because A, it's up to me, right? So I know that I'm the arbiter of whatever this destination is going to be. So either I'm going to pay $1,000 for this, I'm going to sit around on my ass and not fucking complete it and not learn a fucking thing, which I've done. I've done that. I'm guilty of doing that. And I've also paid $200 for a course where I've gotten the most amazing information that has changed my life in so many ways, because I invested in myself and I did it and I learned from it and I implemented, right? And so I want you to speak about how much or how important that was to the creation and the execution of Warriors to Wealth.
So we did, like I mentioned, we did the Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? You go to do the $3.99 or whatever it is, your wife and I, and we were like, okay, we need to change. We were really, this is where the detriment we had. We were like, okay, we got to take some of our funds and we pulled them out of the IRA because we were like, we bought into it. So we did that. We didn't the one thing wrong with that, and from my ability to go, is you hit it for a week and then you're not hitting it, right? And that's hard because you get fired up and then you don't, right? And so it was very hard, but we spent money. I mean, we learned, right? Everything's a learning. Things cost. It's time. It's money. It's, it sets you back. But it was good because it got me thinking otherwise. And that's one of the things I'm putting into this is, let me just tell you what I've done, because I'm a lot cheaper than you buying 10 $1,000 courses. Right.
And I agree with that. Right. That's my approach to it too, is I'm just regurgitating what I've learned and shortcutting the mistakes that I made out of it for you. And
so that was the first one.
That's really how any business is
Absolutely.
built. I don't care what anybody says. All of the people that are further along than I am, that I have conversations with, that I look up to, that advise me, had the same questions that I'm asking them, not 6 months or a year ago, right? And it's just kind of how it works.
So we kind of knew that, right? So when we were, and then we, like I said, we transitioned. Okay, we need to move from the houses. It's expensive. And this is like the 2019 time frame, right? We're like, okay, we need to what's going on, 2020 COVID, when we signed up because the houses were getting expensive to buy. And we're like, okay, we need a different asset class. So we're like, how do we play catch up? That's when we joined the mastermind. And we looked, and our buddy, who we truly respected, said, hey, come join this one. And so we checked it out, did some stuff. My wife actually went to one of their courses, but she got the course because we joined the mastermind. Now, that mastermind, I think it was like, I don't know, 15,000 or something, but it's a year long.
Yeah, usually when I hear mastermind, it's coming with
a price
tag, but it's also, I mean, it's very high ticket, what you would expect out of a 15, 20,
yeah, $25,000. It was, and now it's COVID too. Right. So we're in the midst of COVID, but they're finding places to have people come and meet. Right. So we're like, venues, we're going. Right. Like, I'm not letting this shit stop me. I went through cancer. God damn it. This is the cold. I'm moving forward. Different subject.
Yeah. No.
Right. I've got enough anthrax into me. I'm like, I have enough anthrax into me, or all those other shots they gave me.
For sure.
I ain't taking anymore. Yeah. I'm good.
Yep.
Anyway.
So the mastermind, you get there, right? And talk about how important was it, not that you paid money to go to this thing to learn from somebody who somebody turned you on to that you respect, but just being in a room full of people willing to pay that kind of money to be in.
Oh my God. It's insane, right? I still talk to, like, I'm going to have a crawfish boil. Like, we're doing something, I'll tell you what we're doing this year, but we're going to get back. We took the year off the mastermind. We've been doing it for 4 years or 3 years. Our first mastermind that we showed up, the portion of this mastermind is you have to give back. Like, we started giving back, right? You're part of your thing to do when you show up is you're going to present, and then in that presentation, you're going to give back. They're like, oh shit, what do I give back? Right? Right. So it really made you have to think. You don't go there as a class to learn. You go there as a participant to discuss and figure it out. There was guys there that, hey, look, these guys are figuring out some stuff, but they're trying to figure out leadership. I'm like, fuck, I know some words on leadership. And we talked a little bit about how to make sure you're each doing the right job. And they went and found somebody that does coaches on that, but it was kind of like spurring that moment. Our actual give back was 75 hard. Like, we just started doing 75 hard. I think it was 75 hard. Maybe that was one of the other ones. Because I was trying to get back into shape and go back to my mentality and all that. Hey, I'm going to throw this out. 75 hard is not a physical challenge, okay? For anybody who thinks it is, it's not. It's a total mental challenge, and it's a total mental mindset. And if you're thinking that it's that, no. If you want something to challenge you, to put your mentality back into focus and all the shit comes with it that's great, take a look at that. I'm just throwing it out. I can tell you that I've done it multiple times, and it's helped me a lot to focus on. It's kicked my ass to get my shit going and not be afraid to do what I'm doing with Warriors of Wealth.
For sure. So I think there's an interesting insight in this mastermind, and I think the big takeaway of doing masterminds is not access to the mastermind itself. It's not what it costs. It's not even really the people that are in the room, which is obviously a huge factor. But I think really what it is it sounds like the mastermind that you went to forced you to take action. It forced you to be uncomfortable. And in that, it's just a little taste, and actually probably not a little taste. It's a big taste. I have no idea how many people were there, but putting yourself out there to a room full of people you don't know is tough, right? And they're forcing you to do this, and you paid them to force you to do this, right? And so it's giving you a taste of what you're going to get when you go and start building Warriors to Wealth. Absolutely. Right? Is that, you think that's a fair insight? It's absolutely.
And it's still the best money I spend or continue to spend. I'm telling you, at any given time, like, you run into a question, somebody out there may be able to help you with that. And it's not like you need to start from zero. Some of these guys, like I said, one guy's building $1 billion company. Okay. Guess what? He's an Army reservist. Okay. And he's building $1 billion company. Great guys. And then there's other guys that they have kids that are military. They're going to help. And they, like we had a project we were looking at to buy, and we bought them up, and we brought this one. It was a self-storage one. We're like, we've been looking at this, but it's got a car wash. And you know what they asked me at that mastermind? We were kind of, we had to show them something, talk about something, and then they were going to give us feedback, and then they wanted to know what our give was, right? So, you know what I got asked about that storage that had a car wash? Do you want to own a car wash?
Really? That was the question.
Well, that was one of them. And I'm like, well, yeah. And so my response was, because I'm go-getter and blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, I think I could get over there and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, let me ask you this other question, because it's like 2 hours away. And he goes, do you want to spend your weekend driving to fix a car wash? I'm like, that's
right.
No. Do you think that's your opportunity? No, it's not. But I got drunk on, hey, this is the first shiny thing I had. And it took the mastermind to wake me up and say, well, you can do that, but what's your exit strategy? I don't know.
Right.
Convert it?
That's so good. And that's super important, because shiny object syndrome, it's real, right? Especially with the internet. And I've fallen victim to all those: faceless YouTube, e-commerce, drop shipping. And what you have to understand is those things go in cycles, right? And so by the time I'm getting into it, it's at the top of the wave on its way back down, right? And so it took the mastermind for you to realize that. And now Warriors to Wealth is doing its thing. And so let's talk about that. What does Warriors to Wealth do? What are you just teaching your demographic how to purchase and operate self-storage places?
So Warriors of Wealth that's one of the outcomes, right? Look, if somebody said right now, hey, Rod, I'm interested in Warriors of Wealth and I want to build my mission along with that, great. I want them to build a mission. If it includes self-storage is where they want to go, by God, all means, I'm going to do that. But if their mission says, hey, I want to be more in learning about how to help people with PTSD. Well, guess what? I've been out there trying to find people who are smart on that. And those people will tell you how to do it. So it's the group behind Warriors of Wealth that are basically just volunteers like myself right now.
So you're building a network.
I'm building a network of resources beyond that says, here, as you're working on this, I can guide you to the steps you need to get to this if that's part of your mission, right? Just like another guy says, I'm a financial advisor. If you think that you want to become a financial advisor and that's how you want to do your finance and be that person out in your life, I can do that. I have another one that does franchises, right? And then, but then there's the spiritual folks of, hey, look, I just need some help right now to figure things out. I got a person that does psychotherapist on PTSD and sexual trauma, and she's great. And she's a prior military person. So it's, my path and where Warriors of Wealth is, it's going to be, and I'm building books to it, is here's how you lay out your path. Discover your unknowns in each of these quadrants. Once you've kind of highlight, holy shit, I'm broke here, we'll focus on that and figure it out. And then we're going to keep moving. Yep. So if you say, hey, look, my path in finance is I'm going to take a W-2 job. Okay. Is that where you want to be the rest of your life? No, I want to be my own owner. Okay. What does that mean? Does that mean you want to have freedom to do other things? Or does that mean you want to have a lot of assets that you can sell off or give to your kids? We'll lay that out because that's going to tell you where you want to do it. Or if somebody says, hey, look, I just need some extra cash right now. I want to build a little bit of an empire that I can use to help sustain us as we get ready to transition and figure something else. Just like me, storage is only a step to where I want to get with this campus. So that's why I have what's called Warrior Storage. And I'll train you how to evaluate, how to run a self-storage facility remotely. That's what I'll do. If you want to give me the time and we'll figure it out, we'll figure out how to have you buy one. Definitely call.
So I'm sure people are hearing this and are like, well, that's great. You've created this great resource that, veterans can come to, but how does it make money? Right. So how does it make money?
That's
And,
where it's going to
what are your
become,
plans for
right
that?
now, I want to prove the fact. So right now,
Of course. No, I understand that. But I mean,
eventually it's
obviously,
going to get,
if we're talking about entrepreneurship as being a path to purpose, obviously income has to be associated with,
yes.
living just because of the way it is. So I know that's going to be a question I get. It's great what Rod's doing, and how is he going to make money? So, I assume if you've got Warriors to Storage,
Warrior
is that what you
Storage.
said? I think I heard you say that. Warrior Storage. So is that like I'm
going to partner with you in that
business? Oh,
I'm going to have some skin in the game. Now, again, skin in the game is anywhere from, how much help do you need? Right. I'll take like management. I'll take a 1% portion of the income. Okay. That's small when you look at the things, right? But for you to accelerate to be able to own one, yeah. Or guess what? I may show you how to flip one of these things, and maybe you flip it to me. I'll pay you for that. And you just made money, but you learned how to flip it, and I got a storage unit because I'm trying to build up my assets to buy this campus.
Well, this is a new development, audience. If you're listening, this is what happens when you network with people and put yourself out there. You get opportunity, and I'm excited. This is interesting. That's cool.
You want to know what's cool? You know what's cool? And we just figured this one out through our mastermind is my wife and I invest in 4 other facilities. We have one that has a 5 pref. So I don't know if you know what 5 pref means. So let's say somebody goes out there and is asking for money for partners to go buy a facility, right? But you don't really want to be involved in it. Like you're not, and that's kind of like the paths you can go. You don't want to be involved in it, but you'd like to see some money come back from an investment, right? And this is what I'm saying is, hey, look, if you want to do 401ks, great. You can't touch them. You can't touch them, and the rules change, and somebody's going to screw you. Okay? But I'll tell you what, in limited partners, in asset classes, there's people out there and stuff that I would do. It's called a 5 pref, and then what they do is they'll say, hey, look, this project, if you want to invest in it, we'll give you a 5 pref and a return on investment of 15 to 18% overall once we close it out. So what does that mean? Well, 5 pref means 5% of the income of what you put in, you're going to get paid back every quarter or semi-annually, yearly. So you're going to be like, holy cow, okay. I'm going to give this guy $25,000 and he's going to give me $250 a year. Okay, 200 or 2,500 back, right? So I'm already. Right. He's not only you're going to get your principal back, your 25,000. You're already starting to get paid, and money you can use. So now you have. Let's compare that to 401k. So in 3 years, usually these are 3 to 5 year projects. In 3 years, you take $25,000. They're going to give you 18% return on investment annually over the time. That's a pretty good investment. Okay. But you're like, well, God, do I have to wait for the end of the 18? Not if they're giving dividends at a 5 pref. Now, whatever their dividend this thing is, they're going to give you, and what that pref means is, look, there may be a tough month or something like that if they're leasing up where we're just paying the bills. But before the general partners that are running that project get paid, they pay you first. So they take nothing, not a goddamn cent, until you're paid your money. So as a limited partner, you do nothing, and then you get paid before the general partners get paid. That's a pretty good deal.
Wow. So,
right?
We're getting a masterclass here, folks.
Did I do it? Did I know this beforehand? Heck no, but I'll tell you what. That's why I have several, I have a lot of money in some of these others, and we have one Here's one of them that we did as a ground up, build up. And that company's large enough that they're getting ready to strike ground. We put money in it 2 years ago, and every 6 months I was getting a 5 pref.
Wow. This is good
Right?
stuff. So, man, if you're out there listening to this and this interests you, reach out to Rod. He's very passionate about this, obviously, and he can definitely help you, as we have just learned. So, reflecting on your whole journey, what do you think are the most valuable lessons you've learned?
Balance.
I like that.
Balance.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Balance and
what advice?
Balance and the only other one I would put in there is partner. The right life partner.
I love it. What advice would you give to veterans, first responders, anybody like that who are currently navigating their transitions into civilian life and are interested in starting a business?
Be real to what you believe you are. Don't buy the shiny W-2 job because it has a bunch of money. Have a plan. And if it is the case, have a plan. If it's not really what you are, but it will enable you to meet your overall mission, then do that. Your mission doesn't stop, okay? Your mission only gets better. And you will find that. So be true to who you are. Figure out that mission and execute.
Man. So good. And the last thing I have, man, tell everybody how they can connect with you, get involved in what you're doing, and passionate about socials, all that stuff. I want everybody to be able to find you.
All right. Well, the easiest way to find me, I do have a website. It is www.warriors, WARRIORS, the number 2, wealth. So it's warriors2wealth, number 2.com. That's an easy way to do it, but heck, reach out to me directly. Rod at warriors, number 2, wealth.com, right? Yeah, at warriors2wealth.com. Yeah. That's one way. Also, you can reach out directly to me. I'm on Facebook as Warriors to Wealth. I'm on Instagram as Warriors to Wealth. And I have a YouTube channel. I think it's Rod72. I have to look that one up. I just go to it. But my Warriors of Wealth and all that pull my videos. I'm posting videos of guys talking about how they're going to give back, what they can give back in, and why they took on exactly like we're talking about, why they decided to stop doing their W-2 to do their own entrepreneurship, and that the fact that they have found by doing that, they're more willing to give back and make a better world than those that are stuck in a corporate attitude. There's a difference. You can make money, okay, and you can be a good entrepreneur. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be a good entrepreneur, but you can be more impactful as an entrepreneur than you ever could realize. And that's why I'm going to do it.
I totally agree with that. I think that's 100% true. One last thing, what book would you like to share with the audience that you think is a must read?
I got so many books.
Pick one. Just the first one that comes to mind. Couldn't even be the one you're reading right now.
Slightest Edge.
What's that?
Yep.
Slightest Edge by?
Shoot, I can't. I'm going to have to find the author on that one. But I am reading one right now that just came out, which probably would be a good one to read. I like it so far. It's called Operator Syndrome. And that's by, God, am I drawing a blank?
I'll just look him up and I'll link him in the description. No big deal.
Helm, I think the last name's Helm, Eric Helm. He was actually just on a podcast. I heard him talking about it. He just released a book. The book actually talks about a lot of I had no idea this guy, but he as a veteran, a guy who worked at the VA as a psychiatrist, seen the same thing we're talking about. And I'm like, holy shit, I got to read this book because it's like exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. Rod, I really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you for taking this incredibly generous time to talk with me and put your story out there. I think this one's one of my favorite ones so far, man. I really appreciate the vulnerability and willing to go to those places and those dark times. It really means a lot, and I think that it's super powerful for the community. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rod Blunk, I really appreciate you.
Back at you, Adam. I'm gonna be giving you the same opportunity. I'm looking forward to. I think we need a mastermind. I think we need a mastermind on the lifestyle mission, and I think we can get that done. I know we can get it done.
For sure, man.
There's no thinking about it anymore.
For sure.
It's execution.
Definitely. We'll see you guys next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.